In terms of like the current state of the retail space, most people are focused on, from what I can tell, on acquiring capital from prop firms, right? And it makes sense, nothing wrong with prop firms, but I think over the years it's been such a focus that even people using them, I think we mentioned earlier, like taking payouts and making a personal account, even people using them aren't really doing that. They're just, if they are getting funded, they're just getting their payouts and then just continuing with the funded route, which is nothing wrong with that either. But I think, as we've talked about, though, having that time horizon, it's smart to build a personal using the prop firms. I think that's really what they're there for, in my opinion. I think that's what they really should be there for, is to, if you have no capital, you can use this avenue, if you have an edge, to build your capital.
Absolutely.
To then actually take that capital into a personal account. And then still have diversification. You can still trade both then. But at least then you have a bit more peace of mind, because you don't know, within this industry, we've seen brokers go away, we've seen all sorts happen. So it's not even just to say that everything's safe over here. This is the industry we're in. There's a lot of volatility involved. Even the brokers are taking risk and so on. So anything can happen at any time. And so I think it's our job really to understand that and then position ourselves in the best way possible to, alleviate risk. But there are other options available, like investor capital, managing other people's capital, copy trading, and so on. But I think a lot of people aren't sort of aware of it or understand a bit more details to it. Is there anything that you can share with us?
I think just hitting on the funded account scenario, I'm not against it, but I think you've got to again play it like the 20%. So I think it's a different mindset getting qualified than it is staying in the game. And I think if you can see it almost as two separate tasks, you're then ahead of half the people out there that are doing it. I always say, if you can sit once you're qualified and have the patience of a saint, or the patience of 1% of traders out there, and you can get to £1 million of hypothetical funding or whatever it is, then that 10% payout is worth so much more than the first. But I think the thing that kills people, yes, there's obviously a percentage of people that don't make it past the qualification. It's phase one, because they want the first payout. I spoke to a guy. He's like, I paid my mortgage off, I worked shifts. He said, if I can get to payout one, that will cover my expenses for an entire year. And I'm like, it's over already, because you're thinking about that. So I think in the prop firm space, if people can think a longer term, just like we talked about for any trader, they've got more chance. There are other avenues. So I have a regulated managed fund. I'm not regulated myself, so I don't have the qualification, but I come under an asset manager that does. So the way that worked is they actually contacted me. I've been doing it 4 years. They probably contacted me about 8 years ago. And for me, I was like, at that point, I was like, I don't think I want to manage other people's money. It wasn't for me. And then they kept hounding me, sent them my track record. And then I said, all right. So I think it was June of 2019 that started. So very simply, all that I have is I have an account of my own. And anyone that wants to invest into that, they simply have an account that gets connected to mine. So it's a little bit like copy trading, but it's authorized under a regulated entity. So essentially that's the initial way that a lot of people can get in. Obviously you need a good track record. Now, the thing with the track record isn't just how much money you can make. It's all about drawdown. So what they actually looked at, because I sent it in and I was like thinking, okay, and they was like, Ali, there's a couple of months here where you've had a few bigger drops. And I'm like, well, that's the way that I trade. They said, would you trade that way if you were trading other people's money? You were trading under our umbrella. I said, no, actually what I would do is I would very simply initially and probably stick at half the risk, because I understood at that time that if I'm trading somebody else's money, it's a very different ball game. And also the other thing is, if you're doing something like that, then Joe Public puts his money in, or the institution puts their money in, and they could be putting their money in slap bang at the point where you're going into a drawdown. So you have to account for that. And for me, it's all about managing risk. So I don't do anything that different on my fund than I do on my own account, except I heavily reduce the risk on the trades. And it's been a really, really good experience for me. I thought it would be easier than it was. But interestingly, even though I have a rule, no friends and family, and honestly, a lot of the people listening to this, I'm looking for 10 to 20 max % a year. So I'm not looking to hit what I'm looking in my swing account. I'm aiming for 50% a year in my swing. So I'm looking for a much smaller return. But the challenge is with that is what I found myself doing is because I have to report my figures each month.
Mm-hmm.
I started becoming a little bit month-centric when it first started.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I've had 2.5% down this month. Oh, great. I've had an 8% winning month. And actually, I would have never done that back in, I don't do it now. I wouldn't have done it back in 2019 when I started out with my own account. I don't even blink. I don't even really measure the month. But having to report just meant my space and time, so I was focusing on the month. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I just found myself getting a little bit more tense about trades that were getting close to target. So I was wanting it a little bit more because I'm conscious that it's not for me. I'm wanting it for my clients. And especially if I knew that somebody's only put their money in 2 months ago and they've had a 1% losing month and a 0.5% losing month, I'm wanting that winning profitability for them. So it actually helped me almost re-understand what new traders go through because it just knocked my emotional intensity up by one point, one volume notch up from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
So it was a really good experience for me, and I'm really glad I'm doing it. And there is a long-term plan to it. So yeah, any trader listening to this could potentially get involved in that as long as they've got a consistent track record and it's not yo-yoing up and down. Because I mean, there might be copy trading firms out there that are okay with that, but the firm I use, it's drawdown first, profit second.
Yeah. And would you say that going through that process, I know there's options, and depending on how you want to structure it, and then also I guess the firm that you'll use, it will be management fee and performance fee.
Yeah. So with mine, I just chose to go straight performance fee because again, I'm not, and again, this is another thing that is space and time horizon oriented. I'm not looking to make money from it over the short term. It's more a challenge for me, and I want to get 5 years under my belt, and then I will go more institutional with it, and then I can also go to other firms with that track record that could set me up more with institutional money. So I see it as a stepping stone. However, yes, if somebody comes in, it's performance fee orientated. So what happens is there's simply a high watermark. So every time I breach that high water, I get above it, then returns wise that gets split, and there's a fee. I think it's 25% that we then split, and the asset manager gets a bit and I get a bit. That's how it works. And if somebody's introducing money into the fund, then the asset manager takes their bit, and we have a separate agreement on how the split of that 25% goes.
Nice.
So it's good. But it's, again, for me, it's more about a long-term play. Yes, when you get a payout, it's lovely, but I'm not trading for payouts. I'm not doing anything other than placing the trades that I would, and I just see the play out as bonus money.
Yeah.
Because then that way there's no decision bias.
Yeah.